Jacob Rees Mogg, the Minister for Brexit Opportunities. Good to see you, Jacob. Thank you
good to see you. Thank you for
joining
having
us.
me.
So, I mean, I was going to say, Jacob, you look upbeat. You always look relatively upbeat. Are you feeling upbeat? Because as we sit here, the Prime Minister's whole future, the premiership of Boris Johnson, is absolutely on the line.
Well, everyone knows that political office is a leasehold, not a freehold, and in a way, politicians have every day to persuade people to hold faith with them and carry on. This clarifies it very precisely, but I think the Prime Minister will win, and that will close the issue.
Can you really stand by what you said earlier on, though, when you said one vote, a majority of one vote would be enough for Boris Johnson? You're not new to politics. You know the Prime Minister needs to have substantial support among his MPs in Parliament to have a secure and confident future. One vote is not enough.
One vote is enough, because he has a majority of 80 with which to govern. What people are forgetting about with Theresa May is that although she won, and that settled the leadership of the Conservative Party, she then lost the meaningful vote not once, not twice, but 3 times, and that was what brought her premiership to an end. It was her inability to get things through Parliament, which it's very unlikely will affect Boris Johnson because of this much bigger majority, and of course, the Fixed Term Parliament Act has been repealed, so there is the threat that if you vote against him on a confidence vote, that you move to a general election, which people don't want. Whereas those of us who voted against Theresa May on the meaningful vote could do so confident that it would not lead to an election.
Right, now you're speaking with the experience of a former leader of the House of Commons. You know these byways intimately. And of course you're right, to lose a vote of confidence means a general election. But there are many votes that can and will take place in this Parliament under this government short of a vote of confidence. And so far, even as things stand, Jacob, before we get to this point of relative insecurity on the Prime Minister's position, you've been struggling to get votes through that are remotely contentious, that upset any significant part of your party. If you get to a point where only half of MPs back the Prime Minister, that will be amplified.
I think you're ignoring the point about the Fixed Term Parliament Act, because without the Fixed Term Parliament Act, the government can declare any vote to be a vote of confidence. Under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, it was a specifically worded resolution of the House. So we're back to how things used to be before 2011. And you may remember, you're bound to remember actually, because you probably reported it, that John Major had a vote of confidence on, he lost a vote on bringing the social chapter into the Maastricht Treaty. And the next day he reversed the vote on a vote of confidence, and even the most ardent Eurosceptics voted with him because it was a vote of confidence. So the removal of the Fixed Term Parliament Act is constitutionally very powerful.
Well, let me put this to you then finally, and again thank you for coming over to
thank you for having me, but England's most distinguished radio journalist, so thank you.
You're too kind. Let me just put this to you. You can say, and you'd be right to say, now that the Fixed Term Parliament Act is gone, the Prime Minister has in his power the power to call a general election. Prime Ministers, any Prime Minister, including this one, is not going to call a general election when you are 10, 11 more points behind in the polls. I suggest to you, Jacob, that's an idle threat.
I don't think it is, actually. I think the idea of a vote of confidence is one that has historically been fundamental to party discipline, because if you can't get your votes through, you can't govern. And if you can't govern, who's your mandate from? It's from the British people. And the Prime Minister's victory in 2019 was, I would argue, one of the most personal victories in British electoral history. Like Blair's victory in 1997, like Margaret Thatcher's in 1983, people were very much voting for the leader rather than the party. So it is his mandate, and therefore I think people elected on his coattails ought to support him, would be well advised to support him, and therefore the confidence issue becomes important and relevant.
So in a word, you're telling me if the Prime Minister can't get all his business through the House as he would wish to do, he would then call a snap election, even if he were 10 points behind in the opinion polls, which is where he is now, give or take a few points, and that would mean, on all the politics that you and I understand, he would be moving us into a general election in which the Labour Party could hope to emerge at least as the largest party.
I would actually say it's the other way around. He would get his business through by saying this is a vote of confidence, and people would vote for government policy in a vote of confidence.
And he would threaten that.
Because that's what they were elected to do. And most Conservatives, most of the time, their default position is to vote for the Conservative Party. Even me. As a backbencher, I rebelled relatively often. But I think if you look at They Work For You, or whatever it is, you would still find that I voted for the government 96% of the time. So even rebellious MPs routinely support the government.
Yeah, the reason I struggle with this is that it's a reverse of the normal blackmailing scenario where the Prime Minister, on your scenario, will be holding a gun to his own head and that of his government and saying, do as I say or I'll blow my head off.
But let's rewind. This is exactly what John Major did successfully in 1993 to get the Maastricht Treaty through. even against staunch Eurosceptics. People like Bill Cash voted with the government because of the no confidence threat. So it's one that historically has been an effective part of managing the parliamentary party.
Okay, as the music strikes up, I will let you go. You've got a lot to think about. Jacob Rees Mogg, good to have you on the
Good to see you.
programme.
Thank you.
So coming up a little later on, more on this subject, which will see us through until 10 this evening, the big moment, 9 p.m, when we hear, has the Prime Minister made it? Has he crossed the line? Has he survived as this country's PM? And if he has survived, in what shape will he be in then? In just a moment, I'm going to be talking to General Sir Richard Barrons on our daily briefing room to get the thoughts, the reflections of a former senior military commander on the war in Ukraine.